Haste makes waste. Oh, and spoilers. Welcome to the channel, I'm Hayes, I'll talk movies all day, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today, I want to talk about RoboCop 2, the 1990 sequel to one of the most beloved movies ever made. And this movie, as I remember, had a pretty good reception when it came out, but apparently, not such a good reception now. In any case, I'm gonna tell you why it's trash. The movie starts off with an advert for Magnavolt, a car security system that electrocutes a would-be thief. What really sucks is that it's now 2022 and no one has actually made this yet. Ugh. Anyway, news reporter Casey Wong says that the Amazon nuclear facility has blown its stack. Irradiating the world's largest rainforest, and that environmentalists are calling it a disaster. Jess Perkins replies with, "But don't they always?" Now that may be true, but this is a disaster, not exactly the time for flippancy. And how does Ed 209, the thing that's supposed to protect people but clearly doesn't work, still get approved for deployment? Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. So a few things. First of all, this driver is an arsehole because he purposefully turned his car into the woman's trolley. He had plenty of time to slow down, and by the time the car caught up with her, she wasn't even in his way, so yeah, he could have easily avoided her. Now that said, look both ways before you cross the road. And this guy's an arsehole for robbing a homeless woman. Not that robbing anybody is good, but you know. And seriously, doesn't anybody look where they're going? Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. So the police are still on strike from RoboCop 1. Why did this guy still go to work in his gun shop? That's gonna be up there with the worst places to be during the purge. Okay, so we know RoboCop is bulletproof, but that car got hit with a rocket. Twice. And then exploded with Robo still inside. And yet his armor is still shiny and clean? RoboCop punches a guy through a door, but that's actually assault. Robo didn't announce who he is, nor was the man making any threats, and for all we know has nothing to do with the drugs. He could have been the janitor that's now having to carry a gun around because the police ain't doing their job, and it's not like that weapon presents any danger to a robot cop. Yet, a law enforcement officer inflicted bodily harm on a civilian without due process. Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. Also, why is a door to a drug layer made out of such thin metal? Are you dumb? Also, it took those guys way too long to realize the door had been shut behind them. Are you dumb? Why did RoboCop touch the baby? I mean, I know that's supposed to be its human side coming through, but did he really think those giant metal Wreck-It Ralph hands are going to provide any amount of comfort? And how does a giant robot stand in a drug factory, fiddle around with a baby and not get noticed? Are you dumb? So how long has Nuke been on the streets? They don't say, but it's kinda implied that it's been a while at least. Yet RoboCop found the cult leader in what, 7 minutes? Okay, granted he didn't capture him, but it clearly shows had they sent RoboCop when Nuke first hit the streets, they probably would have solved the issue before they turned the cameras on to shoot this movie. And then they would have had time to shoot a different movie instead, like the one in the original script. So earlier Robo punched a potentially innocent man, but even after seeing the ladies clearly manufacturing Nuke, he leaves them alone. That's sexist. Hobbs shoots one bullet at Robo's head and it scrambles his brain for a few seconds. This is not the first time a bullet hit RoboCop in the head. Matter of fact, he was just in a car that got hit by 2 rockets, so where's this brain scrambling coming from? RoboCop uses his robo-targeting to shoot the bad guy in the head, but following the path of his aim, that bullet would have grazed the baby as well. Also, by the time RoboCop shoots, the bad guy isn't in the same position, so really? That baby died in this scene. And why did this man groan after getting shot in the head? Didn't no one tell him what instant death means? RoboCop uses police resources to spy on his widow while reminiscing about a time when he used to be a man. Why aren't the police or OCP keeping better tabs on the whereabouts of this thing? OCP execs give Robo a good talking to afterwards, but he is a robot. They could just reprogram him to not be a creep. Well, I guess they kinda do, to be fair. But the OCP guy says some pretty harsh things to get him to admit that he's not Alex Murphy, he's simply a machine. Then RoboCop says some pretty harsh things to Mrs. Murphy, which was super unnecessary. So is everyone just an arsehole in this movie? In fact, speaking of being an arsehole, driving a limo was no excuse for inconsiderate parking. So the mayor signed a contract either without reading it or consulting a lawyer first. How did this guy get elected? Actually, That's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. So what exactly does this nuke drug do? I mean, they say it's addictive and it's a plague on society, but what exactly does it do? Because apparently people are taking it and still living normal productive lives. When Lewis couldn't find Hob, Robo says 5 degrees south, southwest, which I guess is a very robot thing to say. But the thing is, 5 degrees is a very acute angle, and from where they are, the movement would be very slight, which means when Lewis said she couldn't find him, Hob was already pretty much right in front of her. Are you dumb? So bad cop Duffy turned up to a drug meet in his police uniform. Are you dumb? How long was Hob and Gillette backing up before Lewis said freeze?
Freeze!
Was she just waiting until the camera caught her good side? And why is this guy even called Gillette? He's clearly not the best a man can get. RoboCop really didn't have any proof that Duffy was a rat. He just knew that there was a cop there, not which cop. Could have been anyone. Maybe Duffy was there to pick up his nephew or something. Robo didn't even give him a chance to explain before he tortured him and called him a rotten cop. And after calling Duffy a rotten cop, Robo turns a corner without indicating and nearly ran someone over. Kane's crew were at the old factory and knew Robo was coming. Okay, cool. But if they're inside the factory, why was the padlock for the gates on the outside? Did someone lock the gates on the outside and run around the other side to get to the back entrance? If so, why? Is that one of the effects of nuke usage? Furthermore, if they knew Robo was coming, why even bother lock the gate? They just wasted like 30 seconds of screen time. And there is no way that Thunderfoot managed to set the car in motion and sneak away without no one noticing. So it turns out Kane's crew knew Robo was coming because one of their other rat cops ratted out on Duffy. But the only 3 cops at the arcade were Robo, Duffy and Lewis, which means Robo really should have checked if Duffy was the only other cop at the arcade. Or, considering Lewis didn't go with Robo to the factory, I think we have our answer. Angie was shocked when the doctor cut up Duffy because Kane said he was only gonna scare him. This guy had the Surgeon General killed at the beginning of the movie, and all this time she didn't realize she was hanging around with a psycho? Are you dumb? Earlier, Dr. Fax said that Murphy was a success in a RoboCop suit because he was top of his class, devout Irish Catholic, family man, and had a fair sense of duty. And so now when looking for a suitable candidate for RoboCop 2, she's rummaging through death row inmates thinking that's a good place to start. Are you dumb? Well, to be fair, plenty of hardened criminals are top of their class, religious family men with a fair sense of duty, so... Why does RoboCop have a screen that pops out of his arm to indicate a system failure? Dude's been chopped in half. I think that system failure is pretty obvious. This is the second time RoboCop has gotten berated and the second time he's yielded to what they said. So after all this, RoboCop is really just an insecure little boy that needs mommy and daddy to tell him what to do. By the way, this doctor is played by a guy whose last name is Doolittle. Just saying. So I get that OCP went OTT with making RoboCop nicer, but the fact that the police doctor can tell something is wrong by Robo being polite really just goes to show that something was wrong before Robo started being polite. Now look, these kids are delinquents, no doubt, but do you really want to be a cop pointing a gun at children, Lewis? Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. Also, everything RoboCop did after OCP reprogrammed him was in line with what a police officer should do in those situations. Well, apart from reading Miranda to a corpse. But the fact that Lewis can tell something was wrong by Robo doing things right really just goes to show that something was wrong before Robo started doing things right. Also, Lewis left her side of the car open and unattended. Are you dumb? Now going by the direction the smoker is looking in, I'ma have to guess that Robo is not standing directly in front of him, which means this bullet killed him, or at least took off half his face. The police doctor suggested running a few thousand volts through Robo to get him back to his violent ways, and then Robo goes to electrocute himself. Now this would have been a great time to bring back Magnavolt, but oh well. Anyway, my question is, if RoboCop is insulated, how are they gonna run any amount of volts through him? And there's no way Lewis knocks back that heavy-ass robot with a thin plank of wood. So a whole army of police show up at the factory unannounced, no warrants, and shoot first. Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. And speaking of shooting first, Lewis apparently learned her lesson from the last time she was in a bando. Shoot first, look at the dick later. The one person that actually tried to avoid Robo is the one person Robo knocked off his bike. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Robo steals his bike and doesn't try to avoid him when riding away. So after all the reasons Dr. Fax gave for why Murphy was a success as RoboCop, she decides a drug-addicted cult terrorist is the perfect candidate for RoboCop 2. Are you dumb? And considering that Kane is a drug-addicted cult terrorist, why is there no police security at the hospital? Man didn't even have his own room, just a curtain that literally anyone can just walk into. The mayor agreed to meet an anonymous donor at an abandoned factory. Are you dumb? I guess somebody heard the shooting and called the police, but why would Robo turn up on his own? Last time he did that, things didn't go so well for him. I was a child when I saw this movie for the first time, so certain things didn't occur to me, like how blatant this scene is. Like, this is super obvious. In your face obvious. Not a shred of subtlety at all. Anyway, the old man gives a speech in front of way less people than the venue can hold. Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. Turns out Dr. Fax didn't tell the old man about the robot's drug addiction. Are you dumb? Whose idea was it to add a whistle while Robo and Kane were falling from the building? What is this, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner? Why was the Gestapo guy trying to stop Lewis from getting in the tank? At this point, they're on the same side. And why would Robo let Lewis run in front of Kane with a nuke canister? Are you dumb? Matter of fact, why would Lewis actually run in front of Kane with a nuke canister? Are you dumb-er? There was literally nothing stopping Kane from shooting Lewis and taking a nuke. This was not a plan. They got lucky. Anyway, the movie ends with RoboCop riding Kane from behind and Kane getting his back blown out. Alright, so before I get into my final thoughts, if you liked this movie, check out these movies. They all involve a crime fighter that covers part of their face. Escape and Dread are also set in the future. Batman and Dread also use high-tech equipment, and they're all more realistic than you might initially guess. Well, apart from Batman. I mean, a rich guy helping people out? Now that's ridiculous. Alright, so what went wrong with RoboCop 2? I remember people being excited when this film came out, and by people, I mean the other 11 to 13 year olds I would have been hanging around with at the time. And come to think of it, perhaps their opinions of kids watching movies they ain't old enough to be watching isn't such a great barometer for general public consensus. Anyway, I remember liking this movie when I saw it. It's a fun movie. It has action, humor, blood, brains, all the things a good wholesome kids movie needs. But watching it now, I think it's fair to say it doesn't have all the things a good solid movie needs. Like clear motivations. OCP is a corrupt organization, that much is clear, but even corrupt organizations know you can't just pull out an expensive, untested product and hope for the best. Or at least they did know that. Dr. Dolittle got shot during the original RoboCop 2 test, yet somehow Kane's robot skips the test and goes straight to a public demonstration. And there's some insinuation that the old man is only letting Dr. Fax do so much because he's perhaps using her for sexual gratification, but is he? Or is she using her sexuality to further her own career? And if so, what is her end goal? Putting Kane in the RoboCop 2 unit was a means to an end, but it's never stated what that end is. Because if it was just to get a seat at the board, I think there's far more easier ways of doing that. But whoever's using who, and maybe they're both using each other, are we really supposed to believe that the CEO of OCP just let some random girl he don't know head up a project that can shape the public perception of the company just because she had a nice pair of legs? Actually, that's a pretty accurate prediction of the future. Also, the whole thing about nukes seemed incomplete as well. They say it's a highly addictive drug, but aside from that, it doesn't seem to have any negative effect. They don't get high or drunk or zoned out. They literally just go about their day as normal, and yet we're supposed to believe it's a plague. Nukes seem safer than cigarettes and easily safer than alcohol, so what exactly is the problem? It kind of feels that there was supposed to be a subplot involving the inability to tax nuke being the real reason governing bodies don't want it on the streets, but that just got left out of the movie. Also, I swear nobody ever learns their lesson in this film. We got RoboCop insisting on turning up to fight crime on his own, Dr. Fax not following her own advice with the RoboCop 2 project, and the mayor making a deal with Hob after the deal with OCP, though to be fair, Hob is probably less crooked. Overall, it just seemed the movie didn't really have an idea of what it wanted to do outside of making a sequel to cash in on the RoboCop popularity. RoboCop is effectively a kids movie that kids aren't old enough to watch. And to be fair, a lot of movies at that time knew violence could help sell toys, but they usually, to varying degrees of success, prioritized making a good movie first, then corrupting kids second. RoboCop 2 just said, forget plot, forget character development, forget consistency, let's just do the bare minimum to have some kind of story while RoboCop does cool RoboCop shit. And that's pretty much what it did, and to be honest, I can't be mad at that. As much as it seems like they didn't really know what they wanted to do, perhaps the truth is, they did exactly what they wanted to do. Maybe rather than looking for it to do what the first RoboCop movie did, you're supposed to just enjoy it for what it is, which is not much of anything outside of violence and action. In fact, perhaps the opening of the movie tells you everything you need to know about RoboCop 2. It would shock you, but it won't drain your battery. And that's what I think of RoboCop 2. What do you think of RoboCop 2? Let me know down below, and while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a suggestion if you don't mind.